The story begins in a world where many people possess magical powers. We follow a girl named Nori who has always felt different from other children since childhood. But one day, something strange happened that changed her life forever. When she was 7 years old, she was looking at her neighbors through the window of her room, and at that moment, her eyes fell on a cat standing in the garden. Suddenly, she started growing whiskers and transformed into an exact replica of the cat. Just then, her father entered the room, and suddenly, wings sprouted from Nori's back. That was the moment when Nori discovered her uniqueness. 6 years later, Nori and her best friend, Reina, were about to join Sage Academy, the most prestigious magical school in the country. Reina had the ability to control fire, and although she was very capable, she lacked confidence in herself, which often caused her to lag behind. However, Nori always reminded her that she could do anything she set her mind to. But Nori herself also struggled to control her powers. In reality, whenever she transformed into an animal, she would often end up creating a hybrid by mixing the features of 2 or 3 different animals. A few weeks later, Nori and Reina, along with other children, arrived at the bus stop to go to Sage Academy. However, just then, a strange man emerged from behind a tree and claimed that he was there to take them to their new magical school. The children bid farewell to their parents and followed the man into the forest. After walking for a while, they came across a portal that led them directly to Sage Academy. The first to step into the portal was Bud, and soon, Nori, Reina, and the other children followed. Upon arriving, they realized that their phones were no longer working at the school. Soon, the school's principal, Linda, appeared before them and announced that all children would be divided into 5 categories based on their abilities. The first group was the Fuzzes, consisting of children who could communicate with animals. The second group was the Flickers, who had the ability to pull objects with their hands. The third group was the Flayers, who could control the power of fire. The fourth group was the Flyers, who could fly in the air. And the fifth group was the Fuzzes, who had the ability to take the form of any animal. Before classes began, all children had to undergo a test in which professors would assess their abilities and assign them to the appropriate groups. The first to take the test were the Flayers, who were given the task of lighting a candle placed 2 meters away. The first student to go in was a boy named Philip. After his test, the principal handed him a card and asked him to wait outside. Later, when it was Elliot's turn, he failed to light the candle because instead of sparks, smoke came out of his hands, which left the professors quite disappointed. Finally, it was Reina's turn, who was the best among her peers. She lit the candle effortlessly using just her little finger. Next was the test for the Fuzzes, where they had to communicate with a dog and ask it a few questions. If they correctly understood all of the dog's responses, they would pass the test. In the third test, some students were required to use their powers to pull a flower pot toward them. However, when it was a girl named Piper's turn, instead of pulling the flower pot toward her, she accidentally pushed it away and it crashed straight into the wall. As a result, she was rejected from the test. Then came the flying test, in which students had to remain 1 meter above the ground for 30 seconds. However, when it was a boy named Andre's turn, as soon as he removed his heavy backpack, he immediately shot up to the ceiling. His powers were beyond his control, and he could not come back down even after trying. The professors had to use a ladder to rescue him. Finally, it was Nori's group's turn. In this test, they had to look at a cat placed in front of them and transform into an exact replica of it for 6 seconds. However, when it was Nori's turn, as soon as she transformed, wings sprouted from her back within 2 seconds, leaving all the professors shocked. Once again, Nori had lost control of her power. After the test, she too was given a card, just like the other children. After all the tests were completed, the children gathered in a field where they were instructed to open their cards to find out which group they had been assigned to. Reina was overjoyed to see that she had been placed in the group of fire wielders. However, when Nori checked her card, she was surprised to see that she was not in the Fuzzes group. Instead, her card had UDM written on it, which she did not understand. The principal then instructed all the children to proceed to the cafeteria to collect their group uniforms. However, Nori was directed to follow the path marked with the UDM symbol. She bid farewell to Reina and walked through the forest until she arrived at the UDM headquarters. There, Bud welcomed her and led her into an underground hall. When Nori entered the classroom, she met other children who, like her, had failed the magical test. These children were not taught magic. Instead, they were given a regular education like ordinary children in the country. Hearing this, Nori became very angry and questioned why they were not allowed to learn magic like the other students. Just then, Principal Linda arrived and explained that UDM stood for upside-down magic, meaning children whose magical abilities were not normal or useful in any way. Linda explained that they would never be able to use their magic properly, so it was best for them to live as regular children until they eventually forgot their powers. After that, they would return to the real world and study with normal children. She then revealed that in the year 19389, a boy named Reason Roberts had caused a major incident at the school, which led to the creation of this rule. That boy had been infected by shadow magic, a type of magic used only to cause harm to others. To counter his magic, the professors and students worked together to imprison him inside a secret book. Shadow magic could not operate without possessing a human body. Linda then revealed that shadow magic always targeted UDM children, which was why they were kept separate from the rest and were not allowed to use magic, to ensure that they would forget their powers and eliminate the danger. That same day, the selected children were sent to their respective groups for classes. Meanwhile, Raina learned that the annual Founders Day function was coming up in a few weeks. In this event, 5 new students would be given the opportunity to showcase their magic in front of the entire academy. For this, each professor would select 2 of their best students, who would then compete against each other, and the winner would get to perform magic at the function. Later, Flair's professor, Ergen, held the first class, where she asked Raina to turn a corn cob into popcorn using her powers. Although Raina was very nervous, she managed to complete the task successfully. However, Philip started mocking her magic, which made her anxious, causing all the popcorn to burn. Seeing this, Ergen scolded Raina harshly. Meanwhile, a second-grade girl named Chandra was watching this entire scene from outside the room, smiling to herself. The next morning, Bud took his students to the garden and announced that he had a surprise for them. When he opened a shed door, Nori saw some brooms and became extremely excited, thinking they were going to learn to fly. However, when she tried to fly, she fell straight to the ground. It was then revealed that these were ordinary brooms, and their real purpose was to clean the school garden. Nori then wandered to the area where the other children's classes were being held. She saw a professor teaching students how to transform into a specific type of cat. When she overheard that one student would get the chance to showcase their ability at the upcoming Founders Day event, she decided to secretly practice her magic so she could prove herself and earn permission to learn magic like the others before leaving. Chandra told her that if she wanted to improve her powers, she could help her. Later, we see that Raina, determined to become the best magician in her class, was studying in the library even at night. When she went to return a book, suddenly a black-colored book fell from the shelf on its own. When Raina approached and picked up the book, she realized that it was a book on shadow magic. As soon as Raina opened the book, all the lights went out, and she realized that she had made a big mistake. She immediately put the book back and started gathering her belongings to return to her room, but soon she saw that the book had started following her. Meanwhile, Nori was practicing transforming into a cat with her hostel mates. But despite many attempts, she would transform into multiple animals after just 3 seconds. The next day, when Raina saw Nori with her new friends through the window, she felt a bit sad, thinking that Nori had forgotten her. Just then, the shadow magic book magically appeared in front of her, and its pages started flipping on their own. The book stopped at a chapter that taught techniques to unlock one's hidden powers. As soon as Raina started reading the chapter, a dark cloud formed around her and immediately entered her body. A few hours later, all the new students gathered in a hall to watch a competition between the 2 best students from each class. First, it was time for the Flares, where Philip and Raina were pitted against each other. Philip was confident that he would win the match easily, but Raina surprised everyone by conjuring popcorn ahead of time. When Professor Argon tasted the popcorn, she was very pleased because they were perfect. In the end, Raina was chosen to showcase her magic for the annual Founders Day celebration on behalf of the Flares. At that moment, Nori arrived and said that she had been practicing for several days to improve her magic. She requested one last chance to prove her ability and immediately transformed into a cat. Professor Han was timing her, but after 4 seconds, wings emerged from her back, and she lost control of her powers, continuously transforming into bizarre animals. Raina tried to calm her friend down, but after reading the shadow magic book, her own powers had multiplied, and she lost control of her fire. This resulted in a massive fireball forming, which was about to engulf Nori, but at the last moment, she returned to her original form. Raina immediately apologized and helped Nori get up. Seeing all this, Principal Linda scolded Bud and told him to keep his students in check, or he would lose his job. After this, Nori and her friends returned to the UDM headquarters, feeling dejected because they had lost all hope of ever using magic again. Then, it was revealed that many years ago, Bud had also been in their place. He was once a UDM student. Feeling bad for the kids, he gathered them in the forest and confessed that he was never happy with this job. He was tired of watching UDM kids' dreams shatter, so he decided to train them in embracing and properly using their special abilities. Bud suddenly started singing, and upon understanding his language, many animals from the forest gathered around him. It was then revealed that Bud was also a UDM student from the fuzzy category. Seeing this, the children realized that they were not alone. Unlike the others, Bud did not communicate with animals by speaking but by singing. He had secretly practiced his magic so that he wouldn't forget it. Now, he promised to train the 4 children in magic starting the next morning. Later, while returning, Nori was thinking about the chaos of the day and realized that something was definitely wrong with Reina's magic. To uncover the real reason, she decided to meet Reina. Meanwhile, when Reina reached her room, she found Chandra standing there with the Shadow Magic book. Chandra told her that it was because of this book that her powers had grown so much today. Reina realized that because of this book, her best friend Nori had almost lost her life. Enraged, she ordered Chandra to leave her room. But even after Chandra left, the book magically reappeared in her room. Furious, Reina opened the door, only to find Nori standing outside. Reina immediately hugged her, but to keep the truth about the shadow manual hidden, she had to send Nori away. The next morning, as promised, Bud started training his team. First, he tied a pipe around Andre's waist and asked him to try stopping himself at one level. Andre removed his backpack and started floating upward, but he still couldn't come down at will. However, as the training progressed, the children slowly began to embrace their unique abilities. They no longer wanted to be magicians like everyone else. Meanwhile, they formed a deep friendship and gradually started gaining control over their magic. Elliot learned to shape the smoke coming from his hands, and Pepper mastered using her power to push things away. Additionally, instead of confining herself to just one animal form, Nori began combining different animals to create new forms. On the other hand, Reina watched her friends having fun, and once again, Chandra appeared before her. Reina angrily told her to leave, but by then, Reina had already used the book, meaning they were now connected. The others asked Reina who she was talking to, and it was revealed that only Reina could see Chandra. Reina ran to her room, but Chandra continued to torment her. She knew that Reina had no idea how powerful her magic truly was. Chandra told her that her magic was far stronger than any other student's. Finally, Reina overcame her inner fear and desired to attain her true powers. She fell into Chandra's persuasion and surrendered herself to shadow magic. A little later, Nori arrived and realized that Reina was under the influence of an evil power. Shadow magic didn't just target UDM kids. Now possessed by dark forces, Reina let out a monstrous voice and declared that soon, the entire school would be destroyed. She warned Nori to run if she wanted to save herself. Nori rushed to Professor Bud and told him everything. Her friends decided to inform Principal Linda, but Bud said that Linda would never believe them. He was sure that the evil spirit would attack on the next day, Annual Founders Day. The following morning, all the students and professors gathered in the garden, and Linda invited Reina onto the stage to showcase her magic. At first, Reina welcomed everyone by writing letters in the air with fire. Then, she stood up and announced that she had prepared something special for today. Suddenly, she conjured a massive fireball in her hand, and her shadow expanded, covering the entire garden. A terrifying voice echoed from it, saying that after years of waiting, it had returned. The professors immediately recognized the spirit. It was the same one that had possessed Reginald years ago. Now, everyone realized that shadow magic didn't only target UDM kids. To stop the demon from wreaking havoc, Professor Argon and her students launched a massive fireball at it, but it had no effect. Following Linda's orders, the Fuzzy summoned animals to fight the demon, but they were too terrified and ran away. The shapeshifters transformed to attack it, but their chosen animals couldn't harm the monster. Now, all hope seemed lost, and finally, the UDM kid stepped forward. Pepper used her hands to push the monster back, and Elliot created a smoke wall to block its vision. Andre flew into the air to distract it, while Nori transformed into a ferocious beast to attack. Finally, Linda instructed all the children to combine their powers and attack together. But Nori stopped them. She knew that behind the monster was her best friend, Reina. She risked her own life to help Reina regain control. The demon was about to finish Nori, but at the last moment, an enormous fireball exploded from within it, destroying the monster. Nori saw that Reina was finally free from shadow magic. Relieved, she hugged Reina. In the end, the UDM kids had saved Sage Academy from destruction. From that day, the UDM program was canceled, and its students were allowed to train alongside the others. Bud was promoted to a full-fledged professor who would now teach children different ways to communicate with animals.